India's middle class 2.0, the top IT firms TCS, Infosys, Wipro, HCL, and Tech Mahindra employ more Indians today than the railways or the armed forces. Similarly, private sector banks have more employees compared with their state owned counterparts, but India still has a major job challenge beyond services. India's middle class after independence was largely created by the public sector. Employment in the public sector stood at 194 lakh, and that on the organized private sector was 80 lakh on March 31, 1995. The former employees in the central and state governments plus quasi-government public sector undertakings and local bodies fell to 176 lakh and later rose to 119 lakh by March 2012. The Ministry of Labour Employment doesn't seem to have compiled or released statistics or on organized public and private sector employment after 2011-12. Even the data published in the Finance Ministry's Economic Survey stops at 2011-12. But it is fair to assume that the trend of organized employment shifting from public to private sector, especially post the economic reforms, has gathered pace after 2011-12. One indicator of that is the number of regular employees with the Indian Railways. In 1990, in 91, the number of employees with railways was 16.52 lakh, which has decreased to 12.52 lakh, and number of regular employees with central public sector enterprises were 22 lakh, which has reduced to 8.14 lakh. Between 91 and 22-23, these numbers plunged from 16.5 lakh to 11.9 lakh, even after accounting for the decrease of 12.5 lakh last fiscal. For increase to 12.5 lakh last fiscal, the drop from the 1990 works out 4 lakh or more, almost a quarter. Still sharper is the reduction in employment with center public sector enterprises from 22 lakh to 8.1 lakh in 23-24. On the other hand, take the information IT industry, the symbol of India's post-reform second middle class, TCS, and Infosys has had 45,000 to 36,000 employees at the end of 2004-5, which soared to 4.48 lakh and 2.42 lakh 15 years later. The real boom, though, took place after COVID-19 as the pandemic triggered increased demand for digitization even among businesses that were hitherto slow in adoption. It had beneficial impact on India's exports of software services and also employment in IT companies. The total headcount in the big five firms TCS, Infosys, Wipro, HCL, and Tech Mahindra went up from below 11.5 lakh in March 2020 to above 16 lakh in end September 2022. Although the numbers have dipped slightly since, the big five IT companies together had 15.3 lakh employees as on December 31, 2024. That's more than 12.52 lakh regular employees with the Indian Railways as of 23-24. It is also more than the currently estimated 14.2 lakh officers, soldiers, airmen, sailors in the three defense services. Another, not as much highlighted, middle class 2.0 story in the banking industry. In the 1991-92 scheduled commercial banks in India had a total employee strength of about 9.8 lakh. Public sector banks had a lion's share of nearly 8.5 lakh, or 87% in that, and the latter number registered a decline to 7.7 lakh by 2020-21, but still exceeded the 6 lakh employees in private sector banks. The period 22-23 was a landmark when private sector banks for the first time overtook their state-owned counterparts in employment. At the end of 23-24, the employee strength was 8.74 lakh as against less than 7.5 lakhs of the public sector banks. This even the banking industry overall today employs roughly twice what it did in 1991-92. A better idea of the private sector led transformation can be had at an individual bank level. The big five private sector banks HDFC, ICICI, Axis, Kotak Mahindra, and Bandhan Bank together had 6.1 lakh plus employees in 23-24. HDFC's employee strength of 2.13 was marginally lower than 2.32 of the State Bank of India. The numbers at ICICI and Axis Bank were higher than the 1 lakh of the second largest bank, public sector lender Punjab National Bank, and the employees at Kotak Mahindra and Bandhan Bank too were comparable to the other state-owned banks Canara Bank and Union Bank of India and Bank of Baroda. Simply put, liberalization and globalization opened up new industries and opportunities. And official periodic labor force surveys show that farm sector's share in India's workforce decreasing from 64% in 1993-94 to 48.9% in 2011-12 and further to 42.5% in 2018-19, but subsequently going up to 46.5%, 46.2% in 23-24. Simply put, liberalization globalization opened up new industries and opportunities for private enterprise that in turn led to unprecedented employment generation whether in IT and finance, bank insurance, mutual fund market, intermediation brokerages, or accountancy, legal, health, hospitality and tourism, transportation and logistics, aviation, media, advertising, sports and entertainment, real estate and retail sectors. The private sector led middle class 2.0 expansion happened just when the post-independence government created middle class 1.0 started shrinking with the initiation of reforms. The above job generation has, however, major limitation. It has been mainly in services. India, unlike China and most industrialized countries, has not experienced a structural transformation involving the large-scale transfer of surplus labor from agriculture to sectors, particularly manufacturing and modern services, where productivity, output value per worker, and average incomes are higher. Official periodic labor force surveys show that farm sector share in India's workforce decreasing from 64% in 93-94 to 48% in 2011-12 to 42% in 2018-19 to 46% in 23-24. Manufacturing shares climbed initially from 10% to 93-94 to 12% 2011-12 only to come down to 11.4% in 23-24. The latest 23-24 PLFS report reveals that 11.4% share of manufacturing in the total employed labor force to be below that of construction 12%, trade hotel and restaurant 12.2% and other services 11.9%. Thus, while the services sector has expanded with India becoming a back office to the world, like China is its factory, the well-paying jobs have been more for the better educated. Not everyone can be a software programmer, doctor, financial analyst, accountant, or a lawyer. Most service sector jobs are informal and low paying. Construction and head load labor, sanitation, security, staffing, domestic help, assistant, party retailing, and gig work. Uber has over 10 lakh drivers using its platform as per the Cabs Aggregators 24 India Economic Impact Report. Zomato engaged 4,80,000 average monthly active food deliveries and 1,45,000 quick commerce riders during October to December 24. Its rival Swiggy has 5.43 average delivery partners for the same quarter. But these jobs cannot, beyond a point, get people to join the middle class 2.0. And therein lies India's real employment challenge. Why US president can't serve beyond two terms traditional that became law. A week after returning to the White House, US President Donald Trump floated the idea that two-term limit for American president could be negotiable. I have raised a lot of money for the next race, I assume. Also, although this is not the first time that Trump has mused after serving more than two terms, the 22nd Amendment to the US Constitution, which was ratified in 1951, bars him from doing so. Before this, at a House Republican event in Washington, Trump had said, I suspect I won't be running again unless you say he's so good we have got to figure something else out. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. The amendment says if a vice president becomes president during the vice term of her predecessor, she can still serve two full terms as long as she serves less than half of her predecessor's remaining term. For instance, Lyndon Johnson, who was John F. Kennedy's vice president, took over for 14 months after the latter's assassination in 1963. He then won an election in 1964 and could have run for another term in 1968 if he had not dropped out. In theory, he could have served for little over 9 years. The amendment was enacted because there was a concern about entrenching power in a king like manner. Kimberly Wehle, who teaches constitutional law at the University of Baltimore, told the New York Times. Although the framers of the US Constitution chose to not have term limits, the issue was hotly contested. This did not set the debate. Only 14 years after the Constitution came into effect in 1803, the first proposal to limit the presidential tenure was introduced in Congress. It was rejected. Then in 1824 and again in 1826, the Senate approved resolutions calling for a two-term limit, but they died in the House. But even as the Congress muled term limits, tradition of presidents not serving for more than two terms had already taken shape. In 1796, President George Washington's refusal to run for a third term received such official sanction that it became an almost unwritten law, virtually as sacred as any other provision of the Constitution. Stathes wrote, this tradition was threatened for the first time in 1872 when, after the re-election of Ulysses S. Grant to the second term, the allies of the former Civil War general began to push the idea for the third Grant term. This became a topic of discussion, especially during 1874 midterm elections. Among other things, the very hint of a third presidential run cost the Republicans a whopping 94 seats in Congress. Grant eventually announced that he would not accept a nomination if it were tendered. In 1875, the House of Representatives passed a resolution which sought to promote the two term tradition. Till date, Franklin D. Roosevelt remains the only president to break the two-term norm. He was in office from 1933 till his death in 1945. He won four consecutive elections 32, 36, 40, and 44. His argument for remaining in office was that US needed consistent leadership through the Great Depression and later World War II. Democrat Roosevelt's passing uh, breathed into the efforts through a constitutional amendment enshrining the two-term limit. Republicans did call for an amendment in 1940 and 44, but Roosevelt's popularity and the Democrats' electoral success meant it was in vain. After the Republicans regained Congress in 1946, one of their first priorities was constitutional amendment to prevent any future president from gaining a Roosevelt-type hold on the White House. In 1947, 22nd Amendment was passed in Congress after lengthy negotiations over what the term limit should be: two 4-year terms or one 6-year term. Decongesting the court, judiciary has taken steps for faster case disposal, but not enough. The Indian judicial system is currently overwhelmed with a backlog of pending cases, particularly those are long drawn. According to available data, 74% of the cases in high courts and 63% of the cases in lower courts are more than a year old, while other judicial for a similarly other judicial fora similarly situated. In this context, judicial decongestion has become imperative with active steps from all stakeholders being critically important. The adage, justice delayed is justice denied, has been oft repeated in light of the increasing delays in the disposal of cases. A pertinent question arises: on whom does the onus fall to ensure that justice is not delayed? While we may be quick to blame the overburdened judicial system, there are some other key contributors to the prolonged litigation. A recent judgment by the Supreme Court in K. Vadivel versus K. Shanti and others provide insights from the apex court on this issue. The case arose as an appeal from an order of the Madurai bench in a criminal matter where the FIR was registered in 2013, final arguments concluded in 2019, and further investigation ordered by High Court in 21. While the case presents an interesting interface for assessing certain aspects of criminal law jurisprudence, it also offers critical insight into the question of delay and protracted legislation. The relevant paragraph of the judgment reads as follows: the legal profession has an important role to play in the process. Any proceeding or application which prima facie lacks merit should not be instituted in a court. We are constrained to observe this because of late we notice that pleadings or petitions which with outrageous and ex facie unbelievable averments are made with no inhibition whatsoever. Reading some of the averments therein, we are left to wonder whether at all the deponents were conscious of what has been written purportedly on their behalf before appending their signatures. These misadventures directly impinge on the rule of law because they add to the pendency and the consequential delay in the disposal of other cases which are crying for justice. It is time that such frivolous and vexatious proceedings are met with due sanctions in the form of exemplary costs to dissuade parties from resorting to such tactics. Apex Court categorically observes that all the stakeholders in the process have contributed to the delay. Most notably, the court emphasizes the critical role of legal profession in ensuring that prima facie frivolous or meritless cases are not instituted in courts. Supreme Court suggests that frivolous and vexatious proceedings should be met with due sanctions in the form of exemplary costs to dissuade parties from resorting to such tactics. Courts also play an important role in assuring that jurisdiction is exercised only when genuine grounds exist and based on established legal principles. Taking a strong stand, the Supreme Court also notes that where parties unjustifiably delays matters, the courts need to be vigilant and nip at any such attempt in the bud instantly. The goal of justice remains a balance between the speedy disposal of cases and ensuring that the pursuit of truth and adherence to the legal procedures are not hampered. This requires a coordinated systemic approach to judicial remedies, with each stakeholder taking responsibility to avoid clogging the machinery of justice delivery. Extrapolating the views of the Supreme Court, it is evident that every stakeholder, including lawyers, corporate entities, and individual citizens, as well as judges and courts, must reassess their approach and introspect on their role in reducing delay, particularly in commercial matters where the time value of money is significant. Delay from any stakeholders can have enormous economic ramifications. International jurisdictions such as Hong Kong, Singapore, and the USA have evolved such mechanisms to address this issue. The US, for example, has 28 USC and 1927, which provides for sanctions in case of vexatious litigation. Legislative enactments focusing on judicial efficiency, such as Ireland's Court Proceedings Act 2024, and other avenues that help to decongest and make the delivery of justice more efficient. The Supreme Court rightly notes that denial of speedy and timely justice can be disastrous to rule of law in the long term. As the court aptly underscores, the administration of justice feeds on the faith of the citizenry, and nothing should be done to even remotely shake that faith and confidence. While the judiciary has taken several notable steps to ensure faster case disposal, the problem needs to be collectively addressed by all stakeholders. All parties involved, and perhaps society at large, must take on the responsibility to recognize, categorize, and utilize judicial remedies in a responsible, time bound, and prudent manner. A just resolution. After Trump's call with Putin, the recent news of President Donald Trump overtures to Russian President regarding a potential negotiation over a war in Ukraine has sparked both hope and concern. While the idea of opening talks is a step towards peace, there are critical implications that can't be overlooked. The suggestion that Ukraine may have to concede significant grounds, including the exclusion from NATO and likely territorial loss, underlines of dangers of such negotiations. It is troubling that Trump's statement could result in Ukraine's sovereignty being compromised. While peace is admirable goal, it should come at the expense of Ukraine's fundamental rights and territorial integrity. Any negotiation should prioritize a lasting, just resolution. This refers to the editorial open and robust at a time when all leading nations must forge a consensus on the regulation and utilization of AI for common good. India and France acted as the voice of reason. They spoke of ensuring that technology builds confidence in people and is more importantly a safe venture. With two competing superpowers, the US and China, representing two extremes, India's call for collective approach of setting standards will benefit everyone, particularly the global south. Refers to editorial The Hero Workers Need. The editorial presents a compelling argument against toxic work culture. Most of us no longer pause to reflect on these things. Our DNA has changed. Work consumes us not just because of job insecurity or rising cost, but because we have the conditioned ourselves to chase something, be it one square meal, a house, or a BMW. In pursuit of these, we seldom question the system that demands our relentless efforts. If work culture today is indeed toxic, then isn't it sustained by all of us? This refers to president rule in Manipur, the decision to impose president rule after the resignation of Chief Minister N. Biren Singh, and the failure of BJP to arrive at a consensus candidate points to the gravity of turmoil. It is critical to integrate the opinion of the people while deciding the next steps towards peace building. President rule would prove to be worthy decision if peace and harmony prevail in the state consequent to the decision. This refers to the state silent revolution drop in unschooled mothers from 47% in from 47% to 29% in 8 years. The report highlights a significant rise in maternal education levels in rural India. Educated mother plays a crucial role in shaping an informed and aware generation. Research consistently shows that children perform better academically when the mothers are educated. This quiet revolution requires policy reinforcement and targeted support. Investing in mothers' education today is the key to building a truly empowered and knowledgeable society. A success story like Amul Can India replicate the milk template in the fruits and vegetables sector? We need scale, policy backing, and a champion to drive growth. India's fruits and vegetable sector (F&V) is growing faster than cereals, roughly 30%, contributing roughly 30% to the value of crop agriculture. It is more nutritious, yet it receives far less policy focus and institutional support compared to cereals. Without organized value chains, proper storage, or adequate processing facility, the F&B sector remains highly vulnerable to seasonal gluts, price crashes, post-harvest losses. Around 8.1% for the fruits and 7.3% for vegetables are lost in the post-harvest value chain, amounting to 37% of the total post-harvest losses of 1.53 trillion annually. Moreover, with highly fragmented value chains, farmers typically receive about 30% of what consumers pay for F&B. But what if these small holders join hands and float farmers producer companies the way it was done in case of milk? The milk story is well known. The milk cooperatives under the leadership of Varghese Kurian changed India's milk landscape for highly deficit country to a world's largest producer of milk with 239 million tons, followed by the US at 103 million tons in 23-24. More interesting the fact that brands like Amul claim their milk farmers receive between 75% to 80% of the consumer price. The big question for policymakers is why India cannot replicate this success story of milk in the F&B sector. It is surely challenging. Unlike dairy, where a single commodity milk was efficiently organized, F&B involves multiple commodity value chains, each requiring specialized infrastructure. F&B are highly seasonal and often concentrated in specific regions, making them susceptible to extreme price fluctuations. The only way to stabilize their prices is by integrating farmers into well-structured value chains that include aggregation, assaying, grading, sorting, packaging, processing, and then having direct market linkages in both domestic and export markets. This is where the role of farmer producer organizations becomes critical. The big question for the policymakers is why India cannot replicate the success story of milk in the F&B sector. It is sure challenging. Unlike dairy, where a single commodity was efficiently organized, F&B involves multiple commodity value chains, each requiring specialized infrastructure. F&B are highly seasonal. Fruits and vegetables are highly seasonal and often concentrated in specific regions, making them susceptible to extreme price fluctuations. The only way to stabilize the prices is by integrating farmers into a well-structured value chain that includes aggregation, assaying, grading, sorting, packaging, processing, and then having direct market linkages in domestic and export markets. This is where the role of farmer producer organizations becomes critical. Sahyadri Farmers Producer Company Limited is one such company operating in Nashik district of Maharashtra, which provides a blueprint for success. Founded in 2004 under the leadership of Vilas Shinde, SFPCL started with just 10 farmers. It had grown into a network of spanning 252 villages, 31 acres. Sahyadri Farmer Producer Company is one such company operating in Nasik, SFPCL, which produces a blueprint for success. In Vilas Shinde, SFPCL started with just 10 farmers. It had grown into a network spanning 252 villages, 31,000 acres, and over 26,000 registered farmers in 23-24. SFPCL's annual turnover skyrocketed from 13 crore in 21-22, 2011-12 to 1,500 crore in 23-24. Of SFPCL's total revenue, 64% comes from domestic market, while exports contribute 35%, reaching 41 countries worldwide. Grapes and tomatoes led the total revenue mix, together accounting for the 51% of the revenue, followed by citrus, dry fruits, and mangoes. However, in the total export revenue, grapes have the dominant share, followed by mango and other fruit slices and banana. At the core of Sahyadri's success it is ability to bridge the gap between small farmers and global markets by integrating aggregation, value addition, processing, and direct market linkages. SFPCL has built strong relationships with international buyers, ensuring that Indian farmers get access to premium markets by adhering to stringent quality and traceability standards following good agricultural practices. SFPCL is the largest grape exporter of the country. Exports 90% of the produced grapes to the EU and the UAE, and the farmers receive on an average about 55% of the FOB price. Another crucial aspect of the SFPCL success is also in its investment in processing infrastructure. Tomatoes dominate SFPCL's domestic revenue at 35%, while the entire produce going for processing into ketchup, tomato puree, and sauce production. This has ensured the price stability for farmers even during glut periods. Because of the expansion of product processing units, SFPCL could also generate 6,000 plus jobs, out of which 32% is women employment in 23-24. The success of Sahyadri Farms give us a blueprint for scaling up the entire fruits and vegetable sector. As of August 24, the government of India has a target of 10,000 FPOs, of which 8,800 have been successfully registered across the country. If India can scale up 10,000 high impact FPOs like SFPCL, it could redefine the fruit and vegetable sector as was done in the milk sector. Sahyadri Farms could be the Dividandi lighthouse as Amul was in the milk sector. This requires interventions in the three key areas for strengthening FPOs through institutional support by providing working capital infrastructure development and digital integration. Linking FPOs with platforms like the ONDC can enhance market access, while blockchain technology can improve transparency and traceability in transactions. Second, reviewing and expanding Operation Greens and National Horticulture Mission. The Government of India has launched Operation Greens in 2018 to stabilize perishable prices, but with a modest 500 crore allocation under the Ministry of Food Processing. It lacked both a visionary leader like Korean in Operation Flood and a clear accountability. Third, commodity-specific value chain approach must be prioritized, ensuring at least 10 to 20% of FNV produced is processed, preventing distress relief and stabilizing prices. What India truly needs is a national fruit and vegetable board akin to the National Dairy Development Board to streamline market linkages, promote efficient value chains, and integrate retailers like Safal, ensuring better price realization for farmers. The question remains, can Vilas Shinde be the Verghese Kurian of India's F&B sector? Sahyadri experiment has already cracked the code. What we need now is scale, policy backing, and a champion to drive this growth. The aim should be to ensure that farmers get at least 55 to 60% of the price being paid by consumers. If India can do it, it will transform its F&B sector. The AI middle path, India has a chance to not choose sides and straddle the approaches of US and Europe to artificial intelligence. As at the recently concluded Paris AI Action Summit, it is quite likely that the two things were talked about. One, the audacious bid by Elon Musk and backers of the non-profit that controls OpenAI, and two, French President Macron's startling deepfake videos of himself which he put up on LinkedIn. While both provide the shock and entertainment value that AI has been generous with over the last couple of years, there is deeper meaning and impact at play here. The US is the undisputed leader in AI, and Donald Trump made his intentions clear with the $500 billion target announcement with Sam Altman and Massa Son on the second day of his second term. The EU office France is striving to be the AI spearhead, has already taken an unchallenged leadership in the regulation and development of safe AI through EU AI Act and a raft of AI safety institutes. The Paris summit, in which more than 90 countries participated, was jointly chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Macron, and attended by US President JD Vance, Vice Premier of China, Zhang Guing, and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as well as Google CEO Sundar Pichai and OpenAI's Sam Altman. The summit focused on six key priorities: promoting accessibility and reducing the digital divide, maintaining ethical, secure, trustworthy AI, enabling its development while eschewing centralization, positively shaping the future of work and jobs, sustainable AI, and reinforcing international cooperation. A lot of these priorities play into India's and France's interest and capabilities. India has bridged its digital divide with its digital public infrastructure rollout and has potential to do the same with AI. It is also concentrated about AI affecting jobs and labor markets and would like to see how its vast STEM workforce could provide a competitive edge. For France, the summit was a chance to showcase Europe's focus on AI ethics and sustainability. Its formidable nuclear power infrastructure makes it a front-runner in clean electricity for AI data centers. As Macron joked, here, there is no need to drill baby drill, it is just plug baby plug. He also announced that France will invest 109 billion euros in AI infrastructure on R&D. As the US retreats into its America First fortress, both India and France would like to foster international cooperation and democratization. As co-chair of the summit, India positioned itself as a major AI player. It must now lead in balancing technology ambition with regulatory pragmatism. Here are my three post-Paris recommendations on the path that India should take. India has a strong and growing economy, a population of $1.4 billion, and it has displayed its leadership in bridging the digital divide through DPI. It could now build on this by taking the lead on AI safety and ethics for Global South. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has already announced setting up of AI Safety Institute, which will set standards, frameworks, and guidelines for AI development without acting as a regulatory body. This will join the global network of AI SIs being set up in the UK, Europe, China, Kenya, etc. India should strive to not only be a part of this network but also become a key player by leading the global south in this initiative. While the European Union is veering sharply towards a strict AI regulation, and the US is adopting a much more free for all, laissez faire approach. India can take the middle path. India's approach has been industry friendly yet cautious, focusing on innovation while mitigating risk through soft regulations. The summit outcomes suggest that harmonization with global AI norms will become inevitable. However, India must ensure that its regulatory framework does not stifle AI startups with overly restrictive compliance burdens. A balanced approach where India participates in global safety initiatives while keeping room for domestic AI innovation would be ideal. India has a chance to not become choose sides and straddle both the US and Europe's approaches. The US is an AI race with China. Aligning with the US would give India unprecedented access to computing infrastructure, innovation, and talent. American big tech firms, which are spearheading AI innovation and have a vested interest in India with its vast English speaking market, global development centers, and an army of software engineers, India should capitalize on this to build strong ties. The Paris Action Summit was a timely punctuation mark in the story being written rapidly. All countries must now pull themselves together and decide what we want to do with this technology. This is also an opportunity for India to position itself as one of the leaders in this effort. Imbalance of power. Trump Modi summit was, of course, not without benefits to India, but benefits for the US are greater. The day began on a business note, asked whether Elon Musk earlier in the day met Prime Minister Narendra Modi for personal business or as a representative of the US government. President Donald Trump said it could well be for his companies. He also immediately added that it was very difficult to do business in India, especially because of tariffs. The day also ended on a business note. After the summit meeting, both Trump and Modi spelled out a list of interstate business deals. No flourish of high principles impeded the blow the flow of business. No defining relationships of the century, as Barack Obama would often say, beyond the tired rhetoric of friendship between the world's largest democracy and its old democracy of freedom, as the terms are discussed did not figure in the public statements. This was neither surprising nor unexpected, for both Modi and Trump winning elections is the only meaning of democracy. It is not a higher value to be promoted, nor does it mean enlarging the sphere of citizens' freedoms. Indeed, during the press conference, Trump spoke of his greater desire to strike deals with China President Xi Jinping, saying COVID put a serious pause in its first term to an emerging personal warmth between them as well as a possibility of deepening state level cooperation. What matters to Trump is how powerful a country is, not how undemocratic it might be. Vladimir Putin remains an object of fascination for him, and the idea that the less powerful Ukraine and can be persuaded to part with territory is now being openly articulated in the Trump's policy circles, including just before the meeting with Modi. Canada, as the 51st state of the US, follows the same principle. The less powerful, in Trump's view, should accept the supremacy of the more powerful, for life otherwise could be made rather tough and unpleasant. The issue is not equality or dignity, it is pure power. Modi had to operate within this larger Trumpian framework of politics given India's relative power. Modi did not come to the meeting as an equal partner but as a junior partner. Consider what matters to Trump is how powerful a country is, not how undemocratic it might be. Vladimir Putin remains an object of fascination for him, and the idea that the less powerful Ukraine should and can be persuaded to part with territory is now being openly articulated in Trump's policy circles, including just before meeting with Modi. Consider what Modi has agreed to do on trade in full public view. Trump took Modi to task for India having onerous tariffs and reiterated the idea of reciprocal tariffs. If India levies a 30% tariff on US goods, the US will do the same. He softened the blow a little by stating that it was a new trade principle for the US now. It would even affect a friendly European Union, a larger trade partner. What was Modi's response? He said he would aim more than doubling the trade to $500 billion by 2030. Last year, the value of US India trade was $192 billion. India's exports to US, both goods and services, were $119 billion and imports $73 billion, leading to the trade deficit of $46 billion. India, of course, is not even among the top 10 trading partners of the US. Canada, Mexico, and China, European Union are top 4, trading goods and services worth between $800 billion to $1.3 trillion. America's trade deficit with them ranges between 200 to 300 billion, which is larger than the total volume of trade with India. This is why the loudest complaints have always been against them. But for India to reach $500 billion by 2030 means not only it will lose 45 to $50 billion in income from the current trade, but also import US goods and services worth $250 billion while exporting to the US for a roughly identical amount. This is what accepting Trump's trade doctrine would signify. I don't wish to be misread. My claim is not that India should not lower tariffs. A more open trade regime will arguably be good in the longer run, but this is not what is involved here. India will lower tariffs to accommodate Trump's power, not decrease them across the board for the sake of economic efficiency. A similar logic applies to Modi's public announcement that he would take back all illegal Indian immigrants in the US. The latest estimates are from 2022. They range from 222,000 Department of Homeland Security to over 7 lakh Pew Research Center. Again, India should unquestionably accept illegals back. But that is not why Modi is doing it. He is serving Trump's greater power on the key issue of importance to him. In a press conference, Modi blamed the illegal Indian immigrants on some gangs duping poor Indians, essentially charging the gangs with human trafficking. That mixes up with causes and consequences. The real reason is that the Indian economy and the Modi is not generating enough jobs, making it possible for gangs to sell illusions. The Trump Modi summit was, of course, not without benefits to India, even if the benefits for the US are greater. Ratcheting up the defense partnership with the US is a good idea. Far from too long, India has relied on Russian weaponry. Russia may have won battles in Ukraine, but even after nearly 3 years, it has won the war against its smaller neighbor. Among other things, it speaks ills of the quality of Russian weapons. India must diversify its sources of arms as well as to engage in co production of technological upgrading. Collaboration in cutting edge new technologies, artificial intelligence, quantum computing is also highly beneficial. India and Silicon Valley have a long tradition of cooperation in the information technology sector, but the sector is unchanging rapidly and India needs to gear up. China might already have stolen a march on some of these new technological domains despite being behind in the 1990s and 2000. Incidentally, this is only type of cooperation for which Trump praised India's intellects and national achievements. At one level, the most surprising silence was on H-1B visas, on which India has been a greater beneficiary. At another level, however, it is not a big surprise. The duel between San Francisco and MAGA The two different bases of Trump remain unsettled. Musk and his ilk, ilk would like Indian tech professionals to come in large numbers. MAGA-based thinks Indian workers may work for smaller salaries compared to American professionals, thus stealing jobs. After all is said and done, Trump's desire to demand subservience to power was expected. Modi would succumb so easily came as a surprise. Was expected. An intolerable toll, the second tragedy calls into question crowd management measures. Accountability must be fixed. Lessons learned. The lives of at least 18 people have been snuffed out in the second Kumbh related tragedy. In less than 3 weeks, railway officials have attributed the calamitous stampede at New Delhi railway station to a combination of factors: the delay of two trains, an inordinate number of travelers waiting on one platform, an announcement of a special train which led to the crowd surging towards the ill fated area. There are also administrative lapses and failures. The Railways has ordered a detailed investigation into the incident, which will no doubt shed more light on the disaster. But one thing is already clear: the two tragedies should be eye openers for authorities that had drawn out extensive plans for the safety of Kumbh devotees. The loss of nearly 50 lives in these incidents should lead to a hard reckoning on what went wrong. It is well known that the railway stations and bus depots record a higher than usual footfall during its pilgrimage season. Like their colleagues at venue of religious gatherings, officials at these transport hubs should be on alert to anything that can trigger panic or anxiety. By all accounts, the authorities at New Delhi railway station were caught off guard on Saturday. The inquiry should not pinpoint the immediate trigger or cause of commotion. It also must fix accountability for the failures and opposition that led to horrific stampede. The probe and subsequent action must be fair and transparent. Crowds are inevitable, be it a rock concert or religious gathering. The challenge of managing them is admittedly difficult when attendance exceeds initial estimates. In 2030, a study published in the International Journal of Stampede Reduction pointed out that religious gatherings and pilgrimages account for nearly 80% of the stampedes in the country. That year, stampede at the Allahabad now Prayagraj railway station during Kumbh claimed 42 lives. Since then, NDMA has framed detailed guidelines for crowd management, yet authorities at large congregations do not act promptly to ensure that crowds keep moving calmly. In recent years, experts have advocated the use of technology, drones for instance, to help law enforcers and event organizers to monitor crowd density and swiftly identify any sources of pressure or disturbance. Technology was reportedly used at the Kumbh venue this year. However, the true tragedies should drive home the need to scale up the deployment of state-of-the-art crowd control methods at pilgrimage sites as well as transit junctions for devotees. Most railway stations are busy places even on normal days. Conversations on railway safety and safety technology upgradation must be made more expansive and address the well-being and safety of security of stations. The imperative should be ensured that pilgrim, migrant workers, tourists, and vacationers who use this mode of transport are safe. At the station and during the commute. The most sincere tribute to the victims on Saturday's calamity would be to learn lessons from it and to ensure that the stampedes and the toll they take become a thing of the past. Ease of tax paying. New income tax bill is welcome. It omits outdated provisions, structures sections and simplifies languages. The recently presented budget for 25-26 will go down as one that provided India's income tax payers meager meager as their number is relatively to the size of overall population, a massive relief with the government taking a hit of 1 lakh crore in revenues foregone, but an arguably more substantive move, an economic and regulatory reform as well as an initiative towards improved governance is the introduction of a new income tax bill in the ongoing budget session of Parliament. The new bill, which is now being scrutinized by a select committee of the Lok Sabha, intends to contemporize as well as simplify the existing statute that dates back to 1961. It is in line with Narendra Modi government's move to abolish over 1500 obsolete laws while updating amending others. The new bill is just half the length of the existing law as it cut total chapters from 47 to 23. Even as it has more tables, sections, and schedules, this has been made possible by omitting outdated provisions, restructuring related portions, and simplifying the language. For instance, now there will be single and separate schedule dealing with all the exemptions applicable to non-residents, and as such, a taxpayer will find it easier to read the law. The language has been improved with a view to prevent misinterpretation. For example, notwithstanding has been replaced by irrespective at several places. And deemed, which often led to litigation, has been replaced by treated in key places. Perhaps most eye-catching change will resonate with most of the taxpayer is the dropping of the phrase assessment year, since it routinely created confusion, replacing it with the concept of tax year. The new bill will also bring cryptocurrencies under the capital assets umbrella. It will enable tax authorities to call for information from virtual digital space and such as online investment and trading accounts, etc. The new bill is not as substantive a change as the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, replacing the Bharatiya Danda Sanhita. The original intent of the bill was only to make the act concise, lucid, easy to read and understand, but given the complicated laws are difficult to read and easy to misinterpret, they lead to numerous and unending litigations and do more harm than the ease of doing business and ease of everyday living than the higher levels of taxation per se. Simplification has been done carefully and in a manner that won't append the existing jurisprudence, something that could have led to more litigation. India to celebrate next Valentine's Day with artificial romance. Registered living couples welcome, interfaith couples enter at own risk. A photo of featuring Elon Musk and his children with Modi tells many stories. The billionaire has not been shy about his views on birth rate, population, and children first is in serious decline, particularly in the developed world. Second, cannot be allowed to shrink if the economy is to grow, and only having more and more of the third can prevent the catastrophe of the demographic decline. Going simply by the recent photo ops, it does seem that Musk is intent on continuing the family affairs vibe that was so prominent during Trump 1.0. If Ivanka, Don Jr., and others for the president, large brood dominated the news cycle during these 4 years. The next 4 years may see spotlight on X and his 10 siblings, not necessarily of their violation. Musk has made no moans about wanting several more children of his own. Indeed, the first two or three of his children with his current partner Zilis, an executive at his company Neuralink, were born via IVF. after Musk encouraged her as a smart person to have children and offered to father them. At the time, he was married to ex-mother Boucher, with whom he was having the second of three kids via surrogate. He also, at the time, already shared five children with his first wife, Justine Wilson. There's no missing the woods for this very complicated family tree. As far as children are concerned, must believes the more the merrier. So what if only words suggest man can afford them? Rubio says Hamas must be eradicated, cast further doubt on delicate ceasefire in Gaza. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Sunday fully endorsed Israel war aims in Gaza Strip, saying Hamas must be eradicated and throwing the future of the shaky ceasefire into a future further doubt. Rubio met with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem at the start of the regional tour. Netanyahu also welcomed the plan and said he and Trump have a common strategy for Gaza's future. Netanyahu says, with US support, we can finish job against Iran. Israel and US are both determined to thwart Iran's nuclear ambitions and its aggression in the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said on Iran following the meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Speaking after meeting with Rubio, Netanyahu said they had held a very productive discussion on the number of issues. US Russia to meet in Saudi Arabia over the Ukraine war, Zelensky says Ukraine not invited. Suspect in fatal stabbing in Austria had Islamic terror motive. Macron to host emergency European summit on Ukraine. Will host European leaders including Britain's PM on Monday for an emergency summit on Ukraine war after US officials suggested Europe would have no role in any talks on ending the conflict. Special train announcement rush to platform. Probe looks at likely reasons. Doge Department of Government Efficiency says cancelled 21 million grant for India voter turnout. BJP targets Congress. In 2 hour period before Stampede, a telltale sign 2600 extra general tickets sold. Around 7,000 general tickets are booked at nearly New Delhi railway station from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day. Over 9,600 were sold on Saturday. A 14-fold jump in soybean oil imports from Nepal triggers red flags in India. April to November 23, $2.81 million. 24, it is $38 million. Soybean oil imports saw a sharp 14-fold surge from neighboring country Nepal. What are India's sovereign green bonds and why is demand for bonds such weak? Green bonds are debt instruments issued by government to raise funds for reduce emissions to enhance climate change. Issuers typically offer green bonds at lower yields than conventional bonds, assuring investors that the proceeds will be used exclusively for green technologies. It is vital that past crimes by the Awami regime, including enforced disappearances and extrajudicial execution, are tried and those responsible held to account. The US has made a UN has made a number of recommendations which must seriously considered and acted upon. Government shelves new PLIs, fresh incentive schemes in the works for some sectors are set to given a quiet burial with many of the existing ones are yet to produce satisfactory results. The spirit of PLI has been lost. PLI is no longer the favored child, an official said on condition of anonymity. Instead, the government is working out the contours of new incentive scheme for clutch of industries. These incentives will, however, be markedly different from PLI schemes. Speaking at Bharat Textile 25, PM said we are ranked as sixth largest exporter of textiles and apparel in the world, and textiles exports valued approximately at 3 lakh crore. Our goal moving forward is to triple the figure to 9 lakh crore. Smartphone exports is 1.5 lakh crore. If we put these deep sea space Himalayas to optimum use, we won't have to wait till 2047 for Viksit Bharat. So that's all for today. See you in the next one.